Hello, Sylvain.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, wherever you are in the world.
Yes, you're in London.
Berlin now. Yeah, the company is in London. I'm based in Berlin for the last 18 months. Yeah.
Oh, really? I'm in Berlin next week. Maybe
Okay. Yeah.
we can hear.
Let's catch up.
But maybe you better introduce yourself. And do you want to share your screen
Yeah. Let me do that.
right now? Yeah. Okay.
Can
Then
you see it? Okay.
yeah. Then Sylvain Reiter from Cyberduck.
Correct. Yeah. Thanks. So let's get cracking straight away. Thanks, Andy, for the invite, and Herbert and everyone who helped to organize that. Really glad to be here today and share a few thoughts with you. There won't be any coding today. Don't run away. I used to be a developer, and we'll talk about how the developer community can help support the sales effort and promoting Silverstripe to make sure that you will work on even more exciting projects in the future. So the main thing I want you to remember today is that Silverstripe is really an amazing CMS framework that competes with the biggest name in our industry. Do you know who claimed this? Do you know who said that? It's me. It's right now, today. And in the next 30 minutes, my goal is to convince you of this. And obviously, I know that being here, you're not thinking about Drupal or Sitecore or Kentico. But when you speak to clients, if you talk to clients recently, they might have challenged you on that statement. I don't know if it's happened to any of you recently. So yeah, I just wanted to demonstrate with you how we made that statement come true and get it backed up by clients. I'm from Cyberduck. We're a digital transformation agency in the UK, based in London. Over the last few years, we've been using Silverstripe to deliver content management solutions for global brands on the B2B sides, for companies like ITVT and Mitsubishi Electric, as well as the public sector and government organization for East West Rail and the Financial Ombudsman Service, which I want to talk to you about today. For all those projects that we're still supporting today, some of them more than 5 years later, we did it in a very efficient manner and with very happy stakeholders and editors. So even our clients can corroborate my statements that Silverstripe is working great for them. So let's focus today on the story of how we won the public tender for the Financial Ombudsman Service and delivered a website with complex integration in less than a year. And this website was nominated for several awards, the most famous being the Daddy Awards and the UK UX Awards. But what's even more important is that 3 years after launch, the site is still very much stable, shining, and growing with content. We're still working with the client on an active retainer. We keep adding new features and supporting their editor, so they have a great experience as their need evolve. As we heard on the first talk, it's at the end of the day, it's the human using the system that needs to work for them. So it just shows that it was the right platform for the job and a good investment for our clients. Going back in time, it's June 2018 when we received a notification about this public tender for the procurement of a new content management system. And being a government arm's length body, the Financial Ombudsman Service have to follow a very strict and open procurement process to just give a chance for everyone to apply. And looking at their requirement that they published online, you can see that they had very strong kind of UX requirements because they had the complex needs, very different audience, personas. They needed help with the content strategy because they had thousands of pages that were outdated. And obviously, they wanted a content management system that was easy to use, that had features for their publishing workflows, and obviously some security credentials, like very strict security and performance requirement that were non-negotiable. So all in all, it was quite a long list of requirements, but being such a large organization, we understood that. And the good news is that obviously we had experience covering all of those requirements from previous projects. Being a full-service digital agency, we could do the end-to-end process. So we felt we had the right credential for the job, and we're confident that Silverstripe could tick all those boxes. But it was not a straight win for Silverstripe because they'd never heard of the platform. So as we applied to this standard, we kept an open mind and all the options open, and started by focusing on the UX. As per this quote, you really have to start with the customer experience and then work backward to the technology. You can't just try kind of select the technology and try to see where it fits or how you can make it work. And you know who said that? Yes, this is an older quote from 24 years ago by a guy a bit more famous than the first quote. So the point is that to convince clients, you have to sell a process and not the solution. Because clients, they won't trust you that much if you come back straight away with answers saying, you need Silverstripe to do this, or only Drupal can do that as the CMS, or WordPress is the best platform to do X, Y, and Z. What we found is that you need to take clients on a journey of discovery and build trust and confidence in that process. So when the time comes to make the technical decision, everyone is happy with it and they feel they've been part of that and not been kind of told to do something. So it also helps to bring data and evidence to the table. And in our agency, we follow, we have kind of accreditation for ISO certification, like the ISO 9001 for quality management, ISO 27001 for information security. So that, again, brings some trust to the process. It's not something we made up. It's well documented. We are audited every year, and we have evidence to prove this in the form of successful past projects and case studies from previous clients. And being a large, whether it's a large corporation or in this example, public sector, there's quite a lot of red tape, as you can imagine. The process is very tedious. And at that scale of organization, there are multiple teams involved. So you need to show that you've considered everyone's requirements. Because thinking about it, this specific tender came from the marketing team, the digital team. Mostly kind of the stakeholders were more thinking about the marketing, the PR angle, and how to manage the communication to the outside world. So those teams, marketing teams, are usually very understanding. I'm not saying easy to deal with, but they're understanding, they listen to your advice, and they want just a system that's easy to use and works for them. But on the other side, there's the IT and compliance that are always trying to trip you or find holes in your pitch or your recommendation. And we cannot really blame them because that's their job. That's what they're paid for. They want to keep everything secure and they don't like risks. So when talking about technical solution and recommendation, you really need to be ready to cover all the points from all those departments. So on the left column, the easier team in terms of marketing with their SEO requirements, the ability to schedule publication and analytics to measure engagement and visitors conversions. We have the editorial team to engage in terms of how they're going to build a content repository, and they're going to be the one creating pages day to day with blocks and templates and the preview elements. So they needed something easy to use and a friendly interface. And then the ongoing support, where they don't want to be locked into a specific vendor or technology. So again, promoting PHP and open source that has a global community is widely supported, so reassuring for them. And on the right, the more tricky or difficult counterparts with IT and InfoSec, where the requirements around the technology stack, potentially with a specific hosting provider, or ensuring redundancy, backups, deployment, scaling, penetration testing. They're really looking at all of that. The compliance team, looking at their permission, the approval workflows again, and the full audit log on this specific project. They're like being able to trace every change, and not just the revision of the pages, but every login, everything that was happening on the system, both at the application level and hosting. And finally, the procurement, where their role is to maximize the budget, have kind of good value for money. And again, the open source elements, avoiding paying for license fee, was a step in the right direction. So how did we convince them? You have to remember, as I said, we have to sell the process, not the solution. So during early discovery, as I said, we kept an open mind because Silverstripe might not be the best solution for everything. So what we did here is agree with the client, kind of summarizing all their requirements into those six categories or 6 criteria that we could evaluate the system against. So again, the editor's experience, the publication features, the security credentials, the community support, the total cost of ownership over 3 to 5 years, and the framework's extensibility as well. On the IT side, their InfoSec team had discarded a .NET platform, and we agreed early on that WordPress was not enterprise ready and just required too much maintenance and security patches. So we came down to narrow it down to 2 systems. Obviously, they had heard of Drupal. I think their main project manager came back from a previous contract where she was managing Drupal for another similar organization, and they were kind of happy with it. And obviously, we suggested Silverstripe and brought that to the table. But as I said, when we suggested it, they said, like, what is Silverstripe? How does it compare to Drupal? Or is it really the best platform to fulfill our requirements? How will it work for our editors? Is there enough open source module? So early on, to reassure them, the first stage was that we had to demonstrate that Silverstripe was a trusted platform. So we highlighted some of the key credentials on everything on the Common Web platform, powering kind of other government entity, also the whole kind of open source concept, which is big for the UK government too, as well as part of their digital standard strategy that they encourage every organization to follow the open source model and standards. And then more specifically about Silverstripe, we highlighted some of the core differentiating features, such as the superior editor experience with the live preview as you edit the pages, for example. That's much easier to use than Drupal. And then the community aspect as well, in terms of the trust and the long-term support of the platform. Yes, Silverstripe might not have as many modules as Drupal, but being open source, the MVC framework, following kind of all the coding standard, had a much lower learning curve compared to other platforms like Drupal or WordPress. So once we had convinced them about the suitability of Silverstripe as a potential, we had to build trust in that platform. So what we did, we set up two separate demos, a server with Silverstripe, server with Drupal. Just took us less than a day to prepare, just configure the default settings, a simple page template, a few blocks, and a workflow to test some of their specific use case around publishing. And we let them play with it for a week. Like, we went away, they tried both systems, and after a few call and retrospective session, they loved the Silverstripe experience, and we won the project. We were selected to deliver it, and now that's when the real work started, really. We had to deliver now. So as part of our process, as I mentioned, we follow the standard digital transformation stages. I won't bore you with all the details. I know you're more interested in the tech stuff potentially, but again, it's important to run the discovery process, because even though you might think, okay, it's for another team like UX designers and the creative, it's actually very important that the developers, tech leads, and QA teams are involved early on in the project. So looking at all their requirements, we interviewed the stakeholders and the personas, not just to understand how they were using the site, but also what they were expecting from the new site. We worked through all the stages, reviewing the content, building the new sitemap, information architecture, and prototype the key sections of what each page of the new site had to contain and how the user journeys will flow. And yeah, as you know, it's a key stages of any website revamp. We have all those steps to go through to deliver a successful product at the end. And as I said, even if not considered more the UX, it actually going to drive all the development specifications that we're going to need to build the system. And it's also at that stage that we start putting together the page templates and the blocks and the components that are being planned. So it's really important for the technical teams to work closely with the UX designers to ensure that things can get built efficiently. Because yes, the system is open source, and I know you kind of amazing developers, and we feel we can build anything. Like, give us the requirement and we'll build it. But obviously you need to consider that the UX could come up with some crazy concepts where the order or the layout that they come up with doesn't really match with the block elements, where you can't really control how users would build those blocks. And then it's going to take us weeks or months to build those edge cases, and it's going to blow up the budget and the timeline. So we found like involving technical teams early on in the process will make the latter stages much more efficient. And from then, once the overall structure of the site was created, we got into the more creative stages. So explored how we could use their branding guideline and turning those kind of black and white prototype into an actual visual design, and produce the entire design system with all the components, all the blocks, for all the different content types that they needed. So again, a lot of creative work and creative feedback, but again, the technical team, mostly the front-end team at this stage, got involved to make sure everything could be built in a responsive manner and the order of the element made sense, thinking ahead about how the DOM structure would be laid out, for example. And before we can start the actual coding, obviously, there was a lot of specifications to go through, and that's why the prototype and the visual designs were really important to write those user stories, build a backlog, and everything that had to be built. So starting from defining the content types, the search logic, the different workflows for publication, how we would be kind of tracking the usage of the website, and everything around the testing methodologies as well early on. So again, a lot of collaboration between the technical team, the designers, and obviously the end clients who had to sign off on the specs before we could start coding. Another growing trend and very important topic is accessibility. It's actually mandatory now for the public sectors, as laws in the US, UK, probably in other continents as well. And all the public sector organization in the UK gets audited by central government, so the Government Digital Standard Team. But designing and building accessible solution is something that really needs to be pushed hard. Not just because it's mandatory or to avoid being sued by a user with special needs who couldn't use your website, but it's actually best practices for everyone. And that's why I'm kind of company and every talk that I give really insist on that, and you need to continue educate everyone in the digital space, both from designers, developers, QA people, and even our clients. So thinking about the color contrast at the design stage for users with visual impairment, or the way in the front end we build the HTML structure for users can't use a mouse and use keyboard navigation. The DOM elements, the order of the H tags, especially when you have a block-based CMS like Silverstripe, you can control how users are going to use the blocks, or they could put any blocks in any order on any page. So you need to make sure the way you build those elements, the H1, H2, H3, it makes sense. So when any page is rendered, they're still in the right order. There's also ARIA tags for screen readers or captions on videos, the way you build kind of if you use the form modules, the way the labels are coded, or the validation, the error messages. All of that, as you see, there's a lot of little details, and it just takes more time to develop. It's one thing it's completely hidden from most users. Doesn't change the way the page is rendered, but it adds more development time, sometimes up to 30%, but it's really worth it. So I really encourage you to learn more about it and enforce it on every project. It's not something you can mark as optional anymore. As I said, it's best practice for everyone. It will increase the performance, the compatibility of your site, and even the search engine rankings now. So Google is even in Google Lighthouse. There's automated tools to validate that. It's one of their criteria now. So obviously it's not perfect. It's easy to manage and achieve high scores on Lighthouse if you just follow all the guidelines. It's not very accurate, but it gives a good base at least to do the things right. But to take it a step further, obviously we had to really validate it with all the other edge cases that automated tools like that don't cover. So what we did for this project and a few others since is running an accessibility testing with real disabled users at a lab here in London at the Royal and National Institute for the Blind. So it was an official audit and got reports from it, and obviously minor tweaks to perform, but the site was kind of approved by that center, the lab, and kind of ticked all the boxes that the Financial Ombudsman Service had to meet, all the criteria they had to meet for their service. And then obviously we got into the builds, the longer and the most exciting part of the project for me. Indeed. Looking at the implementation, we had to deliver on our promise, obviously, that Silverstripe could work well for them. So obviously we continue to follow the best practices. Silverstripe is well documented as a platform, and it's kind of follow the standards with. And you can write obviously nice code, but you also have to think about make it easy for users. So the way you label the field in the CMS, or the way you structure them in different tabs, and the technicality behind it, the end users, they don't really care how nice your code is. It has to work for them as well. So again, there's some human interaction there to decide how we structure the pages on the back end. We implemented obviously search engine with Elasticsearch, and I know there's a talk on Friday and this conference about it. So that was quite a fun experience as well, with a lot of different tagging requirements and filterings. That works well. A few custom integration, the multi-site module we had to use as well, so they could spin up microsites using the same block element with some different branding. So a lot of cool integration we had to do with their back office system. Obviously, one thing as a complex project with a lot of integration, we had to use additional modules. And there's this saying in the Drupal community that there is a module for everything. Sometimes it's taken a bit of as a joke, but it proves that the bigger the community, the bigger the scale, you always have kind of help from other users. Like, you're not the first one to try and solve those challenges. So that's why at Cyberdog we support obviously the community. We used a lot of the official Silverstripe module from the org on GitHub, but we've also had to build a few new ones that didn't exist, or that we didn't find one that did exactly what we wanted. So we open source a dozen of modules as well. We contributed back to the community, and I feel that it can only help grow the platform and make it easier for other users, other developers, and other teams and agency to use them in the future. So yeah, that was really rewarding as well. And then you all know the importance of its quality assurance. But again, I have to remind everyone that it's not just, especially kind of in developer, we do a lot of the testing as well in the code, but always usually think that just I'll hand over that to the QA team, and my tester is going to try to break things at the last minute before deploying. But again, what we found here on those larger projects is that QA has to be a full mindset that needs to be embraced by everyone. It's everyone's responsibility, from the sales team at the beginning in terms of what they commit to with the client, how they price the project, to the designers, the developers. Everyone really has to contribute at all stages by documenting the requirement, reviewing how things are going to be tested. And as I said, we wrote the test plan early on, even before any line of code was written. And then throughout the development, the developer trying to automate as much of the regression testing as possible, the manual cross-browser testing, the front-end team and our QA test. And then in terms of the security requirement as well, the testing the security of the system and the architecture, we had external pen tests. So it's very hard to test your own work. So we got an external team to do the pen test, and I was very successful as well. Only returned some minor comments, stuff we had to tweak in the configuration, but they were quickly resolved. And when it comes to DevOps, obviously with their InfoSec team, they were actually originally an Azure house, but in this case, they were happy to use AWS for that was more kind of ready, web friendly, and ready for those platforms. Because again, we had great case study from other clients where AWS worked well for them. So we built everything in terms of the automation using Terraform, the infrastructure as code. automated the continuous integration pipeline with tools like Buddy, connecting the repo to the Elastic Beanstalk instances. Mostly a lot of configuration around security, as I just mentioned, and we use Cloudflare as an additional layer of protection against DDoS attack. And again, there was some configuration to be made here, actually, that there is a Silverstripe Cloudflare module that helps in terms of clearing the cache when you publish new pages. And there's a few things like that to kind of balance the performance versus the security that was very strict. So the good news is that Silverstripe was pen tested, was approved, and clear to go live by their very strict information security team. It's gone through all their stringent process and was signed off to be deployed. So we can all now use this as another piece of good credential. So one of the most famous public sector organization has given it the green light. It will reassure other clients. So all in all, that's how we did it. That's how we sold and delivered a new content management system website for the financial management service using Silverstripe. And obviously, if it's good for them, it's going to be good for many other large corporate and public sector clients. So yeah, it's all in the hands of the community. And again, that's the main point for today, is that we're on this whole conference and the rest of the year is we're all in this together. We all need to deliver amazing work so we can showcase the best of Silverstripe on every project and what it's capable of achieving. So we need to build more modules as a community. We need to run more events. We need to showcase our work. And yeah, we're all in this together. We need all of you to get involved, to support the community, support what Andy and Herbert are doing here in Europe with the S2 Hub, to promote the work, the quality work we're doing, because it's the only way that will make it easier for all of us to deliver larger and more exciting projects using the platform we love. So that's it for today. A bit shorter, but I guess we caught up on the time, the overrun from the previous chat. So thanks again for Andy and everyone else who organized that. Hope it was useful to some of you. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you need help, either for the next speech or for the need query on the technical implementation. You can reach me on Twitter at Sylvain Reiter, or via our website. You can read more case studies or apply. We're also recruiting developers and project managers. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvain, for this great talk, for this nice showcase. I think also thank you for ending with the power of the community.
Yeah,
and I think we have much more to show from Silverstripe. There are very many users of Silverstripe in the world that no one knows about, and it's really great that CyberDuck is also using Silverstripe in these cases. Herbert is asking, what's the biggest hurdle of selling Silverstripe CMS to larger organizations?
I think it's maybe still a bit about just the reputation of not even a negative reputation. It's just that they hadn't heard about it. Not enough exposure, I guess, to some of those organizations. That depends at what level you're talking to, but either some of the larger organization, they always think like CMO, they're gonna trust a platform like Salesforce or Sitecore, and those platforms, they have millions of dollars to invest in marketing and being on the Gartner Magic Quadrant of CMS or DXPs and those platforms like that. But obviously, we all know that's kind of marketing spiel. And every client or every company that we speak to, that I've never heard a company that's happy with their Sitecore implementation. Either it's too complicated, or we pay too much for it and we only use 5% of it, or it's like we can't find developers to take care of it. It's only a horror story that I hear from most platforms. So it's that's why it's, I guess, easier to sell the open source platform if you can get past those security credentials. And then it comes down to the name, where maybe Drupal, they've heard of Drupal more than Silverstripe. But as I presented, they are, if you try to consider everyone's requirement, not just the IT team who's heard of Drupal and feel a bit more reassured with it. If you talk to the editors who are going to use it day to day, Silverstripe is a better experience for them. If you talk about long-term support, it's easier to support a Silverstripe website than a Drupal website, because Drupal has, again, steep learning curve. There's more modules that you have to use and more updates, more maintenance. So you really need to consider everyone's requirement, and hopefully that makes it a bit of an easier sell.
Yeah, great. That's also answering a question from Andrew. Do you think there are Maxime is asking, are there substantial differences between how you approach a public sector client versus a private sector client?
Not in the approach, I would say. No. Again, you need to do a bit of discovery during the sales process, understanding what do they really care about. So it could be down to budget sometimes. It could be, depends who you're talking to again. On as I said, corporates. The corporate side is usually talking to a CMO, and it's their budgets, and they're the one who have to make the decision. So you need to think about the editor experience, the marketing automation, the integration with Marketo, those type of things. And in the public sector, because it has to be a whole team effort, and it's the procurement pretty much running the show during the early stages. They might come more from an IT budget, where they think about hosting and how they're going to support that, and it's more an investment from the IT side. So here we focus a bit more maybe on security and the credential about total cost of ownership over the next 5 years. But most of the time, in terms of when we present it, is the same deck and the same story that we use for both corporate and public sector. We just tweak or emphasize a few points depending on who we're talking to, but in general, it's mostly the same.
Yeah. Dylan is asking, did you use the information that the New Zealand government is using the CMS as a platform?
Yeah, very early on. Yeah, that was the first kind of to answer, like, oh, we've never heard of Silverstripe. Like, is it like a proven platform? We use that as an example. We said, like, yeah, it's run in the public sector by hundreds of, I don't remember the exact word, it was like 3 years ago. It's probably grown since, but it was like more than 100 different divisions that were running that platform. And very obviously being New Zealand, close to the UK system, similarity with the UK system, the way different departments in government are managed, this central body. They got it straight away. So, oh yeah, okay, that's impressive. And they could see the links online, and they read about it. So yeah, it definitely helped a lot early on.
Yeah. And a more technical question from Giancarlo from Italy. What is your company's preferred hosting infrastructure for Silverstripe? I'm not sure.
We're mostly AWS for us. Okay. I guess it's, since we moved to the cloud, 2008, 7, 8, we started. It's just a platform that's most open, flexible, stable. We've tried a few of our clients required Azure hosting, more on the software as a service application side, where we're building things in Laravel for the more custom apps. But it's just very painful with Azure. There's always something going wrong, that's not ready. We've never tried GCP, and AWS was just the most compatible, whether we need to host Laravel or Silverstripe or Drupal. It's pretty much the same stack. So I think 80% on AWS is today.
Yeah. Thank you, Sylvain, for this great talk, and it's good to hear from these cases from CyberDuck. That CyberDuck is using Silverstripe in this way, and we see us on Gather. Thank you very much.